Hello and welcome to episode 51 of the Mark and Me podcast. As always, I'm your host Mark, and coming up on today's episode, it's going to be James Acaster, one of my favourite comedians in the business right now, an absolute hilarious guy. I've been lucky enough to see him live in the past. I've got his book, and also only recently I watched his Netflix special, Repertoire, which is a 4-part episode special, which is one of my favourite stand-up shows, and I advise you all to go out there and literally watch it as soon as possible because it's awesome. This follows on really, really nicely from Ricky Tomlinson, who was on the show only last week. And I thought, let's get some more comedians, let's get some more people within comedy on. So that's what I'm trying to do. And here I am now with James Acaster joining me on today's episode. A big thank you to Ricky Tomlinson for coming on the show last week. Everyone loved it. I love the feedback. I've seen so many tweets and Facebook comments commenting on how nice he was, how upbeat he was, how confident he is, how great his stories are. And he's someone that I do hope to get back on because I know this guy's got so many stories to tell, and I just want to get him back on as soon as possible. A big thank you to everyone for last year. Hopefully you're listening now and it's January, so Happy New Year to you all. But 2018 was a busy year for Mark and me. I never expected to release 27 different episodes. I was putting together a collage the other day with all the pictures of the guests that have been on, and I had no idea. When you get caught up in it and you're editing and recording, it's strange. You don't actually take note of how many episodes you've done. And then when I came to put it all together, I was actually shocked. 27 different episodes, alongside 24 episodes of Skip to the End, giving me a total of 51 episodes released last year. Now, considering there's only 52 weeks in the year, that gave me 1 week off. So what I probably should do is recharge the batteries, take some time out and rest. But I ain't going to do that because this year in 2019, I want to top it. I want to release more episodes, get more and more interviews conducted and get them out for all of you great listeners. And that's what I'm going to do. And as I said, let's kick the year off with a big one. Here's my interview now with me and James Acaster. Thanks, James, for joining me on the Mark and Me podcast.
A pleasure.
I wanted to start today by talking about when you were growing up. So I believe you're from Kettering, is that right?
Yeah.
So I know the Weetabix factory is probably the highlight of your childhood. But apart from that, what else did you used to get up to before you became a comedian?
Well, I was in a load of bands before. So when I was growing up, I mainly wanted to... Actually, I was going to say I mainly wanted to be in bands, but that's not true. I wanted to do loads of creative things, and that's all I was interested in school and stuff, was the art classes. So actual art class, painting, and I really liked drawing cartoons, and I liked playing the drums, and I liked doing plays and drama and doing comedy plays. So I wasn't good at any of the... I felt stupid acting serious, and I would have to try and turn everything into a comedy, which my drama teachers, some of them liked that and some of them did not like that. I wanted me to try and challenge myself a bit more, but I couldn't do it. And I just, I think I stayed on for 1 year of sixth form and decided it wasn't for me, so I didn't do the second year, and I just formed a band with my friends. There was this BTEC music course in Northampton, so I went on that, but it was like, all you did on the course was form a band. It wasn't really anything else, and you didn't really get a proper qualification at the end of it, but it was just a really good place to go and meet other kids who wanted to be musicians. And then I formed a band with my friend Graham, and me, Graham, and our friends Tom and Simon were in a band for a while, and then it was just me and Graham for a bit in a new band that we formed, and that's pretty much till I was like 22. Then we stopped, and I decided to do stand-up, not professionally, as in like the goal wasn't to go professional. The goal was just do stand-up because I didn't know what I wanted to do in my life. I had no qualifications and had a lot of free time. I was working part-time in a kitchen. I was only doing like 12 hours a week in the kitchen, so I had a lot of free time. And at that point, you know, it was easy to just like, living in Kettering, just to kind of like be on a kind of just a loop of friends' houses and like go around and hanging out with people who, like, you know, I really love and they're still my friends now, but we'd just be doing the same thing every night, watching the same films a lot of the time, like repeat watching, you know, the Big Lebowski or whatever. And I just needed to do something that was productive. Like when I was in a band, I really liked the fact I could, go on. At the time it was MySpace and book gigs, and then we'd drive somewhere, and even though we drive to Blackpool and play to 4 people and then drive all the way home, but even that I felt like I was doing something,
Yeah.
And I didn't like feeling like I wasn't doing anything. So starting stand-up was basically, I just wanted to be doing something again, and I didn't think it would be my job. I didn't enjoy it for a while. It was like something that it was really out of my comfort zone. I felt like even though no one liked the band I was in, I felt like I knew what I was doing, and that I had a handle on it, and I was doing what I wanted. Whereas like with comedy, I had no idea why I was or wasn't funny one day to the next, and it was quite it just wasn't as fun a thing. And it took a long time for me to eventually be like, oh, I want to do this as a job. I think 1.5 years of doing the open mic circuit. And I was doing other things during that time. I was trying to make short films with my friends, and even playing drums in a band that I wasn't like in charge of. I was always like the one organising bands, and so I kind of was playing drums in a band that other people were doing, and it was like, okay, cool, all the responsibilities on them. I don't have to stress about organising everybody, and if that band gets somewhere, it gets somewhere. If it doesn't, then I won't be as invested in it, and I won't have put all my time into it. So yeah, for about 1.5 years, I was just doing stand-up amongst other stuff, because it was the only thing that I was in charge of solely on my own. I wasn't having to work with other people on a short film or in a band or anything. It accelerated a lot quicker, and I improved it a lot quicker, and kind of knew what I was doing quicker, and then wanted to do it as a job. So once you get like half decent at something, you enjoy it more. And luckily, once I decided I wanted to do it as a job, I just moved straight to London, and within, I think it was 9 months, 9 months, Josie long enough to be a tour support, and then I got to quit my day job. I was working in a school as a classroom assistant with autistic children, and I quit that, and then went on tour with Josie, and I've never had to do I hate calling it a proper job, because I don't think that's fair. I think it's patronising the people who have jobs that aren't stand-up comedy. But I didn't have to do a job like that again. I was just doing stand-up.
I love that you talked about the B-Tech as well, because that's what I did when I was growing up, and it was exactly the same. You got dumped in this room with loads of drummers, guitarists, bassists, all basically saying, I don't want to do textbook stuff, and just play Nirvana songs and Pearl Jam songs to try and get a degree. And everyone used to tell me, like, it's worth 2 A-levels, and you're like, oh, cool, but it was worth jack shit. It's just a case of being able to play the guitar for 2 years and not have to write and do loads of research. Yeah,
that's what I wanted to do. I didn't want any qualifications, really. They were no good to me. Like, at the time, I was like, well, I want to be in a band, and I don't want to do anything that requires qualifications, so why would I waste so much time getting qualifications when I'm not even going to use them? So, like, at the time, it was like, I just want to... It's basically, college was just this big resource centre where there's loads of instruments there. We could play whatever we wanted. There was access to a studio. We could use computers and record on MIDI and stuff like that, and learn how to use Cubase and all these different things. So it was just a whole, like, we just used it. Like, we were actually busier outside of our lessons than we were in our lessons, because we were trying to get access to everything and use all the equipment. So, like, yeah, for someone who just wanted to be in a band and push that forward, college was great. But I knew that I wasn't going to get any qualifications by the end. I mean, I didn't even... There was a point at the end we had to do all our... they weren't even called dissertations, but whatever they were, these, like, final pieces that we were handing in. And I just didn't bother with them. Like, I kind of just... Because at the time, I was like, well, I need to be booking loads of gigs for the band. I need to be practicing with the band. And I didn't see any point in writing these papers up, which would only mean that I did less work on the band I was in, when the whole point of going and doing that course was to get in a band and push the band forward. So, I didn't do very well on my grades at the end of it either, because I was focusing more on forwarding the band that I was in at the time. So, yeah, it's just a good way of, like, it's just a little playground, really, to kind of, like, use instruments and make contacts.
So you then did get into the comedy element, and you thought that's definitely something you could hopefully make a career out of, instead of being in the band and drumming and hopefully, touring to play in front of 4 people, as you said, some nights. But Were you actually a fan of comedy when you were a kid? Were you getting the element of comedy from watching certain films, or were you actually watching stand-up routines, or how was it introduced into your life?
Yeah, I was watching both, and like I was watching a lot of. It was mainly comedy films when I was a little kid.
Yeah.
And then I think I discovered stand-up when I was a teenager. I watched a Lee Evans video and thought it was mind-blowing. It was observational comedy. I'd never seen observational comedy before. So like seeing somebody tell you about your life and make jokes about what your life is like in a way that you didn't think everyone had these shared experiences. It was a really amazing... Yeah, that was a really amazing experience the first time I saw Lee Evans. And like, I guess now, you know, can kind of get more pretentious about stand-up and talk about it more and be like, oh, you know, it's all about shared experiences and people not feeling alone. And but like, I think that is true. And like, watching that video for the first time and realizing that other people, you know, did the same silly little things that I did. Even just like, you made an observation about, you know, when you are walking down the street and someone's walking the other way, you try and get out of each other's way and you both move in the same direction. I hadn't heard that before. So like, you know, this was mind-blowing at the time. I thought it was so funny. And I think even the punchline for that was him saying that at the end of doing that, he realised he was looking at his own reflection in the shop window, which now would probably be... At the time, I didn't like that punchline at all, because I was like, that didn't happen. And like that, it annoyed me more that wasn't an observation. You know, it's like, oh, well, no one does that. I didn't really get jokes, you know, like silly jokes like that when I was a teenager. I didn't like that. I think it maybe felt a little bit kind of like old people would laugh at stuff like that, silly jokes. But like, you know, I liked observations and things. But yeah, that was the first stuff I watched was like Lee Evans, and then I quite quickly after that got into it's a lot of stuff. I was trying to watch as much stand-up as I could, and definitely while I was in the band, I was watching things that were. I was watching comics who weren't on television for the first time. So I was watching stuff like Josie Long or Will Hodgson or Kitson or and things like that, Paul Foot and people, and really just getting into discovering comics who I had to kind of like put the effort into to discover them, and discovering that people did all these different types of humour and it was all still alive and well. Like, at the time, there weren't many stand-ups on TV, actually. It was just the same names that you had 10 years ago were still the main stand-ups on television at that point. And it was like, the boom kind of happened while I was an open spot. I feel like my school year, if you like, of open spots, we were the kind of like, probably some of the last ones who did it just because we didn't really know what else we wanted to do, and we didn't think it would be our job. Like, it was, we all felt like a bunch of wasted strays, and we're just like, you know, we'd all failed at other stuff.
Yeah.
You know, people I made friends with early on were like Nick Helm and Josh Widdicombe, and like, you know, I'd failed at being in a band, and Nick had been trying to do plays and found it frustrating working with other people, and Josh had like tried to be a writer, and he hadn't really got anywhere with it. And so we all just like had just got into stand-up, but we didn't think this will be our job. I didn't feel like anyone thought it would be their job, you know. And then like, it really, comics started doing arena gigs and stuff during that time, and then suddenly it became like a viable, like, this is a career. And I remember the next wave of stand-ups who came into the open mic circuit, like, they scared us because they seemed like businessmen. Like, they just walking, the way that they were talking was like, oh, like, they're like, yeah, I'm just basically going to get work up at 20, and then I can use bits of that when you know, for like different TV shows, because that's what they're looking for. And we were like, oh, we thought we were just like getting up on stage and experimenting every night.
Yeah.
So it's a bit weird.
So, I mean, we take it for granted now, don't we? We can put on Netflix or Amazon, and there's literally a whole archive of different stand-ups. Literally, it's probably the best time in the world to try and get your show out there and stuff. But back then, do you remember, were your parents taking you to a stand-up show? Can you remember the first time you went to see it live and it had that even bigger impact on you? I think, well, I went to see like some little gigs. So every now and again in Kettering, there was like some small gigs on. And I'd go and see, I think Laughing Horse put a gig on there. They're usually just a London promoter, but they had a short-lived Kettering gig, and I went to see that a couple of times, and there'd be like, you know, comics I didn't know from the circuit on it. I think the first comic that I went to see live, I'm trying to think if it was Lee Evans or if it was Ross Noble, or like there was a period of time I started going to see stand-up. So I don't know. I remember going to see Lee Evans in the Nottingham Trent Arena and being disappointed because, like,
it just doesn't feel like you're at the gig in an arena. So, like, I just felt like I was really far away from him and all the usual stuff that people complain about with arena gigs, you know. And
you're watching it on like a big screen.
yeah, you're kind of watching the screen more, or you're trying to look at him because you don't want to watch the screen. So you think, well, if I watch the screen, I might as well be at home.
Yeah.
So I'm going to try and watch him, but then you can't really see all the little stuff, and also you don't feel, the area that you're sitting in, there's no atmosphere to it because you're not right there with him. We were like, up at the side, so everyone in our area is pretty quiet. So you're kind of sitting amongst people who aren't really laughing, and so it doesn't feel like you're at a comedy show. But I went to see Ross Noble at the Leicester de Montfort Hall. That was one of my first gigs that I went to, and he was incredible. I mean, the first half of that was like just the most, I think, still the most I've laughed consistently throughout a show. Like it was an hour that first half, and I just didn't stop laughing. It hurt at times, and I don't think I've really felt like that since really watching a comedy gig. It was so good.
So it's a good starting point then to go into such a great comedian and laugh your ass off for a good hour.
Yeah, well, he was like one of my favourites, you know, especially like before I did stand up. I really respected improv maybe more than anything at the time. I was like, improvised comedy is the hardest and all this. And yeah, whereas now I know that it's all as hard as each other, you know, like any genre of stand-up or type of stand-up, you know, to do it well is as hard as each other, and it's as hard to do good observation as it is to do good improv, to do good surreal comedy or good, one-liners, whatever it is. It's really hard to it's as hard to do it well. But at the time, I was just obsessed with comedians who improvised, or at least made it feel improvised. So that was a really good gig to go to at first. And then I went to see Josie Long at the Road Menders in Northampton, and that was like quite a small gig. I think it was like a second tour at the time. So outside of London and Edinburgh, you know, when you're a stand-up and you're just doing your second Edinburgh show, you know, people haven't really heard of you outside of, wherever you're gigging, and she was gigging in London at the time. And so Northampton, it was like a small crowd of like people who were all like me. They were all kind of, you know, in their early 20s and, listen to kind of indie music or whatever. They were quite twee. And so it was like just a really nice experience. I remember watching it and just thinking, like, this is amazing. Like, you can do anything you want to do with stand-up comedy. Like, she's talking about things that I just wouldn't think stand-ups could talk about. And even though it wasn't, when I say that, I don't mean, like, you know, things that don't appear funny. Just like, I just didn't know you could talk about whatever you wanted, and that you could talk about just a guy at the gym who you're obsessed with and stuff like that. I didn't know that, you know, you could just tell a whole story about going to Australia and going to a bread factory. Like, I kind of, at the time, thought that stand-up had to be observational, or you had to be, like, in the room, in the moment, improvising. I didn't know you could just, like, tell some stories and it could be, you know, whatever you wanted it to be. And so that was a real kind of, like, it really shifted how I've thought about stand-up. And what was really funny as well is I remember when I supported Josie years later, I mentioned that gig to her. She was like, oh, I remember that gig. It was one of the hardest ones of the tour. It was so hard. And, like, it's just really funny because that's how we feel as stand-up so much of the time. We won't be enjoying our shows or whatever. We think the audience don't like it, and you don't know that there's, you know, for her, there was someone in the audience who was going like, oh, I think I want to do stand-up now, and this has really changed how I view stand-up comedy.
Yeah.
And then she was probably going home in the car being like, oh, that was a real washout, that gig. That's a real shame. Whereas, like, you know, she actually had a big impact on someone without knowing it.
So obviously that kick-started your career. You were going off, you were doing Edinburgh, you were doing all the shows, all the festivals, you were working really hard. I was looking at all your previous tour dates on your website, and you then suddenly had this big jump where I'm sure your family and your friends were supporting you, but you were on Mock the Week, Have I Got News for You? To be on the inside of that, was it a real kind of click and that you were suddenly there, or did it feel like a long road to get to that?
So I think it gradually got a little bit further each year.
Yeah.
And to the outside, it seems like suddenly I was on these things. But, like, you know, there was, like the year before that, I was doing a lot of, like, smaller panel shows on, like, E4 and BBC Three and stuff, so I swept the small stuff, or Virtually Famous, and so I was doing a lot more of those kind of shows. And then the year before that, I was, like, starting to do those shows. And so it's like, you know, for me, it was like, it's this gradual climb, and, you know, the year that I did Mock the Week for the first time, yeah, it was just like, oh, okay, so I've now got that's like the next step from doing, you know, lesser known panel shows is doing a panel show that everyone knows. But to the audience at home, it seems like, oh, suddenly he's on this. And they don't, yeah, because they don't watch those other TV shows, they're not as familiar with them. And also the people who watch those other shows, if they watch, like, you know, Virtually Famous or sort of small stuff, they probably don't watch Mock the Week.
Yeah.
Because it's a different audience, it's a completely different crowd. So to one crowd, you're suddenly on this thing. But no, it was a. I don't feel like it's ever moved. It's never felt to me, really, like, oh, it suddenly jumped and I'm suddenly someone. Like maybe this year it kind of feels a little bit like that, but like it's still it's a lot of things that were kind of bubbling away anyway, and they just all been kind of launched in the same year. But yeah, normally it never feels like more than I can take on. It's like, okay, yeah, this was the next logical step anyway. So yeah.
So then, when Netflix obviously gave you the show of Repertoire, was that the point where you kind of, again, you're on the inside, so it must be difficult, but is that the point where you're getting recognised in the street a lot more, and your family were like, oh, right, okay, you're on this big platform. It's for people that aren't involved in the comedy circuit. That must have been a huge, huge step for you.
Yeah, definitely. And it was, I think the thing about it was that it was a step that I wanted to take as well. I wanted people to see my stand-up shows because I knew that, you know, that's what I put the most amount of work into. And so it's, you know, where I feel like, I was going to say I feel like I'm at my best, but like where I feel like it's what I want people to see. It's the version of my stand-up and my comedy that I work the hardest on, and I feel like represents, you know, me as a stand-up, as a comedian, and what I want to be doing. So I really wanted to get them out there, and it wasn't like Netflix approached us and asked us, you know, do you want to do some specials? And so, you know, last year was me making those specials happen, regardless.
Yeah.
And then Netflix got on board right at the last minute, and you know, it was a lot of hard work. My, you know, obviously I was working hard, my agents were working hard. The production company, you know, we were all kind of working together and sometimes not working together. Sometimes it was a bit difficult. But like, you know, I felt like sometimes I had to really kind of like put my foot down or whatever and be like, no, we are moving forward on this, because like, understandably, for some people, you know, moving forward on a project where no one's agreed to buy it off of us, so we're going to potentially lose money, isn't a good business move. And for me, it was all just a creative move, and I was going to put money into it as well and stuff like that. I wasn't putting as much into it as my agents were, but like I was going to have to put some of my own money into it. And you know, we had to figure out how to film 4 shows as cheaply as possible. So you know, we were going to do it in 2 days and film all 4 shows in 1 day, and then all 4 shows again the next day for safety. And it was like, that was the cheapest way of doing it, and doing it with the same crew. So it's just one setup and all this. So we had to really figure out a way of keeping the costs down, because at the time it was like, well, no one wants to buy it. BBC didn't want it. You know, none of the channels in the UK wanted it at all. They all turned it down. We'd gone to America, me and my agent, and we'd pitched it to loads of different online platforms, and they'd all said no. And Netflix were the only ones who were like, oh yeah, it sounds like interesting. Also, like we were giving them a pretty good deal. I know people, like some comics have tweeted about how much they got paid for their Netflix specials, and it's a lot of money. And we were just like, here's how much we're spending on the shows, and really, we just want to cover the costs and to be able to pay everyone who worked on it, you know, a decent enough wage. So like, I didn't get much at all. Like, some people always think like, oh, you did 4 Netflix specials, you must be rolling in it now, and that's absolutely not the case. And like, it was just, I wanted it to go out there, and Netflix was the dream platform for it, and for them to agree to put it out, and you know, but a big part of that was like, you know, us saying, this is it's quite a good deal for them.
Yeah.
They're not gonna, you know, and so they're like, yeah, it's a no-brainer. Like if he pulls it off, then we look good. If he doesn't, we haven't paid much money for it, so it doesn't matter. And so, like, then they gave us complete creative control and freedom over it. They didn't make us do anything we didn't want to do. And we got to put exactly what we wanted out there on Netflix. And I think that's definitely why it has had that effect. You know, it has had a bit of a jump for me, because, like, anyone who likes it genuinely likes what I do. Because that's what those shows are. Those shows are just like, here's exactly what I do stand-up wise, and I filmed it in the way I want to film it, and I think the way we filmed it gets across, you know, the tone of the shows. And so now the people who are coming to see my shows are much more on board from the get-go, because they know that they like it. They know what kind of stand-up I do. And you do get sometimes, like, you know, recognised a bit more, but it is by, you know, pretty nice people. You know, they're not rude or demanding or, you know, yobbish, because if they like those shows, they tend not to be, you know, really loud laddie types.
Yeah.
So yeah, it definitely has had a jump, but again, like, not a jump like, it's not been like this year with Hannah Gadsby, with Nanette. That's been, like, life changing for her, and, like, you know, that was like, that completely transformed her, and, like, you know, she's, like, properly famous now. And I'd say, like, for me, again, it's been that manageable amount of, like, you know, moving forwards. It's been maybe a more significant step than previous ones, but it's still not like, it's not like, oh, now I can't go anywhere, or, you know, now there's loads of pressure on me for what you're going to do next. It's like, they did, you know, as well as or better than I could have hoped, but not in a way that now is like, oh, my whole life's different. It's not. My life's not different.
You're not going to be on the Ricky Gervais money anytime soon.
No. Well, maybe I'll play hardball next time. No, I don't think I am going to be on the Ricky Gervais money.
So the fact that they gave you, that was my next question about the creative control. I was always worried that it could be like a watered down or a bit more of a slightly PG version of your stand-up. So then when you go and watch you live, you think, oh my God, he's really offensive. I'm really shocked by this. This wasn't on Netflix. So the fact that they let you put it out how you wanted, you must be so proud of that.
Yeah, I think for my stuff, that's not the concern. I think for my stuff, the concern would be that they would try and make it, yeah, I know what you mean, like, more, just what people are used to.
Yeah.
So, like, for example, like, with my one, you know, people could have been like, we want you to film it at the Apollo, because that's where everyone films their stand-up shows, and we want it to be filmed with these cameras and to look like this, so it's sparkly and it's glittery, and we want the shows to be this long, so you need to edit this much out of it, because if you're doing 4 shows, we don't want them all to be 50 minutes, so we'd rather they're all 40 minutes, so cut 10 minutes out of each one, and that joke's a bit weird, can we cut out the weird bits and make it a bit more...
Yeah.
I've had that before when I've done, like, TV shows, I've done stand-up on TV, and you do an entire routine, and then they cut out all the weird bits, and they keep in the observational stuff, and then you just look like a regular observational stand-up, and not someone who's, like, got a more skewed perspective of things. So, yeah, that can happen. And like, you know, Netflix would give notes, we'd send them the edits, and they'd give notes, and then we would either take the notes or ignore them. And, like, you know, some of their notes to begin with were saying, like, oh, the camera goes out of focus here, and there's a light flare here, and the mic stands in front of the camera there. And we were like, oh, yeah, we kind of want to keep those things in. We feel like it, you know, we want it to feel more live and a bit more raw. And they went, okay, well, ignore that, that's fine. And that was it. That was the whole, they didn't try and convince us otherwise. They just went, okay, if you want to keep those in, keep those in. And I think a lot of other places would have been like, no, we, you know.
Yeah, they want it polished, don't they?
Yeah. And I feel like, there's, you know, for ages people were scratching their heads being like, how do we, you know, make stand-up on TV feel like it does in the room? And I think so much of the time it's just like, you know, do a slower edit. Like, you don't need to change camera shots every 5 seconds so that it feels like a blockbuster movie. Like, when you're seeing stand-up live, you're sitting in an audience and you're watching one take, basically, for ages. So do as long a takes as possible. You know, don't turn the laughs up or plug laughs in. If something doesn't get a laugh or doesn't get a big laugh, fine. Like, one of the main things that get tweeted at me by anyone watching my show in subtitles is going, oh, they're really harsh on you with the subtitles. It always says scattered laughter. every time there's a laugh, it says scattered laughter and not laughter. And it's because, that was like, that was the vibe a lot of the time, and we didn't want to cheat and change it. Because sitting at home, if you're watching a joke that gets more than it should, it throws you off and it feels weird, and you maybe don't like that joke as much. Whereas if the joke gets, what it deserves in the room, you are actually in more of a position at home watching it to be like, actually, I really like that joke, or I think it should have got more, or it means something, and you don't really notice how big a laugh it got.
Yeah.
Only the people watching it in subtitles notice, because they're like, oh, it's saying scattered laughter, and they think, oh, actually, it is quite scattered rather than everyone at once. But we just wanted to make it feel like a proper gig, and for that you have to be more, I guess, exposed with it all, and not like, the temptation with a stand-up show when you film it is to make yourself look like an absolute rock star, and like you're a legend and you're tearing it up, and that's not, to me, that's not what stand-up is. So like, it's showing them more like, this is what I do, it's like a band playing an album or whatever.
Yeah.
It's like, here are the songs, and you decide if you like them or not. It's subjective.
I also like the genuine feel then when you do get that moment that is your show highlight, where everyone is wetting themselves or laughing out loud. Then those dynamics of the jokes that don't quite pay off as much, and then when the reward then is so much more rewarding when you finally get a genuine, not a voiceover or a fake laugh to put in. I think it's more of a payoff for you, surely.
Yeah, I think so. Well, and just also for the audience watching at home or whatever, So, but what's interesting is that, because I obviously get a lot of tweets that like are about the shows and stuff, and people's favourite jokes aren't necessarily the ones that are getting the biggest laughs. A lot of the ones that people quote to me on Twitter and whatever, or come up to me after shows and quote to me, they're not the ones that ripped it in the room when we filmed it. They're just ones that resonate with people when they watch it at home. I think that's the thing as well, is that, it is great that there are some jokes that are getting a lot, and obviously a big part of things is that like we film them all 1, 2, 3, 4 in a row in front of essentially the same audience. Like half of the audience changed as the day progressed, but half of the audience were the same all day. And so the fourth show was just easier than the first show.
Yeah.
They're more warmed up and they're more into it. And so like, it was always like, it was always going to be like that in the room, but when you're watching it at home, it's completely different for you. So we just wanted to, like, you're playing to the audience in the room, but you're mainly playing to the audience at home as well when you're filming it. You're thinking like, just do the best performance of this that you possibly can, and it doesn't matter how they're responding in the room, because like they won't notice. And I was really glad that we kept that in mind. And I'd spent a year touring all 4 shows again, so I've been relearning them all. I changed the first one a lot. The first one was like, I originally did it in 2014, and it was not as good anymore. It just wasn't as good as the later ones that I'd written, and so I completely rewrote it and brought it up to speed so it felt as strong as the others. And that's kind of, I think when looking back at making them all, like as happy as I am about the response to it and all that kind of thing, I think just being quite proud about how we all went about it, and that I wasn't lazy with it. We gave people the best thing we possibly could with that. It's like it just, that makes me feel more nostalgic and proud of it, I guess.
So then after the success of this, you then decided to put pen to paper and do a book, Classic Scrapes.
Oh, that was before. Yeah, but it's confusing because it's been released on paperback this year, so it seems like it's been released after. But yeah, the hardback came out, that was 2017 in the summer.
How was it writing a book? Because obviously you stand up on stage with when you're drumming, you do it with your comedy, but that's very more intimate. That's just you and your own thoughts writing. What made you want to do this at that point of your career?
Well, I didn't think I wanted to do it, and then I had a meeting with some publishers, and I was going to the meeting, I was just thinking, I'm wasting these people's time. I have no ideas for books. I've got nothing to suggest to them. And I feel bad that I'm going to this meeting and that they're taking the time to meet me. And the guy was called Richard Roper. He works for Headline, and he's just such a brilliant just person in general, and also like a publisher. And he just he basically had the idea for the book because he listens to Josh Widdicombe's podcast, which I was a regular guest on when it was on XFM, and I would always tell a true story from my life every week, because when I started out in stand-up, I just did true stories.
Yeah.
And they kind of, you know, they never worked all the time. I guess that's a combination of the fact that I wasn't good at stand-up yet. I just started doing stand-up. But when I stopped doing true stories in stand-up, that's when I started getting better, and my writing improved because I had to be more imaginative and all that. But then I had all these true stories that I'd done live that I had nowhere for them to go. And so Josh was just like, why don't you come on the podcast, you can do all these stories. But they made way more sense on the radio, because it was me sitting down with my friends and chatting about stories. So, you know, people... Also, you get interrogated about the details, so, like, you're clearly telling the truth, and people aren't, like, in the comedy audience sitting there going, oh, he's making this up, you know. So, like, that got, like, a little kind of cult following for that segment on the show, and Richard Roper listened to that section, really liked it, and he just said, you know, why don't you just do those stories in a book? And I was like, of course. I was like, of course, like, that's such an easy thing to do, because I've told them all. You know, they're all things that actually happened to me. I've told them to friends and family loads, and then I've done them as stand-up loads, and I've done them on the radio loads. And so, like, I was like, I know them all back to front, and so I can just sit down and write them. So it's actually quite easy to sit down and write, especially the first draft. Is just like, okay, here's all the stories I'm going to write up, and I just sit down and write all the stories up, and then I put them in chronological order, and then, you know, you'd write your next draft would be in chronological order, so you'd kind of be like, oh yeah, because that kind of refers back to that story, yeah, and it becomes like an accidental kind of autobiography when you're like, oh yeah, this suddenly explains a lot more about you. You don't realise that the stories kind of explain a lot about why you are the way you are, and why you did certain things, and, you know, that one story, you know, you can go, oh, I actually only did that because that other thing happened, you know, and I'd remember stories as I was going along as well that I hadn't even told on the radio. So, like, it was a really fun experience writing it, and, like, I mean, there was a point where I was touring the Netflix shows and relearning all of those, and, like, I would be in a different town or whatever for 3 nights in a row. I'd do, like, one show a night. On the final night, I'd do 2 shows, and so I'd be in, like, you know, Peterborough for 3 days or whatever, and in the daytime I was writing the book. And also, it's quite a stressful year last year. Quite personally, I didn't have a very good year last year, despite, like, you know, loads of exciting things happening career-wise. My personal life was kind of, like, a little bit shaky, and so, like, it was this thing about I'd be in somewhere like Peterborough. Peterborough was the worst it got, where I did, like, they didn't like any of the shows that I performed for them on any of the nights. And in the daytime, I was writing this book, which is essentially about all the times I've messed up in my life. Like, every true story is about me making mistakes, things going wrong for me.
Yeah.
So in the daytime, I'd be in a tiny hotel room writing up about all my failures, and then in the evening, I'd go and perform a show that, at that point, I wanted to film, but had no one who wanted to buy it, to an audience who didn't find it funny. And yeah, kind of like, at the time, both the book and the you know, live shows seem to be lost causes that were going to be, like, not go very well. So, like, it's nice now, kind of like, that, you know, both of them have done better than I thought they would, you know.
So that sounds it must be quite a hard one, because stuff outside was bad, stuff at home and your life was bad. What did you do to get back on that road to recovery? Were you just sticking at it? Were you trying to write new material? Were you changing the stuff that crowd didn't like? Or was it just a time that you think just nothing would work, so you just needed to kind of just bear with it? Or did you try and change everything?
It depends what you mean by road to recovery. Like in my personal life, I was, like, going to therapy and going and doing as much exercise as I could, and stuff like that, and just trying to get back on track that way. And then just career-wise, I kind of just did what I've always done and got my head down and been like, okay, like, here's the problems with the shows. Like, so, like, especially with that first show with the 4, I was like, here's all the problems. It's just like being honest with yourself, because I think when I was an open spot, to begin with, I'd always blame the audience and be like, well, they didn't get why it was funny and they're stupid or whatever. And actually, as soon as I started being, like, honest with myself about, that wasn't funny because you didn't deliver it very well, or the language isn't good enough. Like, they don't know what you're talking about. You need to use better words and things like that. So, like, I always do that now. So I was kind of with my stand-up that year, I was able to go, okay, this first show, here's what you want it to be. So I think that's important as well.
Yeah.
Going, what I want this show to be is this. And, like, especially with the first part of that show, the first 15 minutes of that show, I'm kneeling down, and then I stand up at the end of the 15 minutes, and I was like, when you stand up, that has to get an applause, and it has to deserve the applause as well, and not just be, you can't trick them and force it. And everything leading up to that needs to be funny, and you need to really tighten this up because it's not good enough. And at the minute, you're going to start these 4 shows on a damp script, and people are going to switch off the first one after 15 minutes, and then they won't watch the other 3. So, like, it was just being honest with myself about what I wanted that show to be and why it wasn't making that. So that was what I did with the live shows, was going to be quite ruthless about, here's why it's not good enough, and here's why it's not what you want it to be yet. And then with the book, it was just like, again, it was kind of the same thing. It was like, you want it to, like, you want it to come across like an easy read. I was like, don't try and show off with, like, big words that you know or anything. Like, write how you talk. Just cut out bits that seem to drag it down for you. And so, yeah, it was, those things are quite good to focus on, I guess, when you're not doing well, in your personal life, because you can just sit down and go, okay, I know how to do this. I know that, what I need to be doing with these stories, and I know that it's like either not funny enough yet, or this bit slows it down, so take this bit out, and I like this story, but it doesn't really need to be in there, and it kind of takes away from the whole book, so I'll edit that bit out, but that means I need to make other things longer. So it was like, I was quite clear-minded on how I needed to do, and the book was, like, written pretty quickly, I'm writing a new one at the minute, and it's going to take a lot longer, but, like, that one, I think within a year, I had a meeting in 2016 in Edinburgh about writing a book, and then 2017 Edinburgh, we were launching the book in Edinburgh. So, like, it was a year of, like, writing it.
When you come to write new material, do you have a process of, like, is there a good friend of yours or a group of people or your family that you try it out on first, or do you go on the road and try it and incorporate it into your set to then see what works? Or how does it work? 'Cause it's like, I always look at it as like a band trying to write a new album. When they play the new songs live, the crowd don't really like it because they're ready for the hits they've heard. So when it's a comedian doing it, how do you incorporate it and kind of break those new stuff into your set?
Well, there's loads of new material nights, especially in London where I live. So, like, there's, like, so many nights that are just billed as comics trying out new material.
Yeah.
So I'll go there and do, like, 10 minutes whatever. But I don't write stuff down. So I don't sit down and write at home, and I don't try stuff out on friends or family or anyone. I just go to a gig with some, like, subjects that I feel like I want to talk about. So
yeah.
And I just start talking. So now I'm in a fortunate position where I can book a small venue in London, like a 50-seater or whatever, and do an hour myself of new material, and just have people show up. And it's just always embracing and accepting the fact that you're going to fail before you get a good show. So, like, I've had, within the last year of writing a new show, I've had, pretty uncomfortable deaths in front of audiences. They've gone really badly because, I've just kind of written down, here's things I want to talk about, and I've thought, like, okay, I think I want to talk about it like this, but I'm not sure, and it's all just in my head. I'm just trying it out and kind of thinking out loud in front of them. And sometimes you just don't find the funny bits in them. But, so that's what I do. I just kind of try it out in front of an audience, and then if something works, I either remember it or write down in my phone, like in the notes section, here's how you phrase that bit or whatever. And, but yeah, mainly I just do it live, and I never really have a very clear vision in my head when I start out about what I want it to be, and what I want the show to be. And it's really, I just let that present itself. Like, the more I do new stuff and the more I do a new show in work in progress, is it kind of like, so like this new one I'm doing now is all like true stories and personal stuff, which is not what I did as stand-up before.
Yeah.
It was when I started out in stand-up, and I think that's why I'm doing these now, is because, like, I did those true stories when I was an open spot, and then I did all my solo shows and all my stuff for like the last however long, 10 years I guess, has been like made up and fictitious. And then I did book tour for the Classic Scrapes book, and so it was all those true stories again. And I just really enjoyed telling true stories on stage, and I thought, just do some true stories for a bit, and if you don't want to do it in a show, then fine, you don't have to, and just see how it feels. And so that was all I had going in, was a vague thing of I'll just try some true stories now, but I never really had a very clear idea of what I wanted to be. And the more I did the show, the more I was okay, this is what it is. And eventually you go, okay, now I know what I want it to be. And then I can do that ruthless thing I was talking about earlier and be okay, you want it to be this, so you need to change this, and this. And then you get a lot more regimented with it. But yeah, when it's new material at the start, it's very, very loose.
It's it must be a very busy time for you at the moment, because obviously this year you're on Taskmaster. You've been doing your Sweet Home Ketteringa, which is your own little project. You just told me then you're starting work on another book, you're touring, and you're still drumming and recording music. So do you ever get any spare time?
Not as much as I'd like, but then I have to I had to enforce that.
Yeah.
I'm self-employed. So when you're self-employed, you just you feel like you've got to say yes to everything, and you fill your diary with too much stuff. And for me, it's as much as I like doing gigs, I've got to say no to, gigs that aren't my solo shows. I've got to try and restrict it now to doing work in progress shows that are just me, and then doing tour shows, but not going around just doing every gig available to me, because then I don't get a night off, and then I wear myself down, I get ill, and it's just all sorts. So, yeah, and it's also with those other projects, it's knowing how much to take on at one time. So, right now, I'm writing this book, and I'm getting ready to tour this new show, so I'm still doing work in progress shows of versions of that and knocking that into shape. But those are the two things I'm doing. And then outside of that, I'm not doing that Sweet Home Ketteringa was quite a while ago, but I sometimes do stuff with the same people.
Yeah.
I mean, the people who filmed that are the people who film my Netflix shows, and I still do stuff with them every now and again. And me and Ed Gamble have done a podcast recently that's going to come out. I'm actually not sure when we're launching it. I should know that so I can say it on things like this. But so we've recorded that. So there are little things like that. I'm still little things that I can do that aren't, but they're not. You don't have to prep for them.
No.
The podcast, I don't have to rehearse for it. I don't have to prep. You sit down and write it. Taskmaster was the same. There's no prep involved. You just turn up and you just do it.
Yeah.
So projects like that are improvised is fine. But yeah, in terms of proper projects I have to sit down and work on, like you said about drumming and music, the thing that I'm doing with that in a minute, I just do it when I can fit it in.
Yeah.
And it's just me and my friend Graham again, who I mentioned earlier. But we did a thing at the start of this year with that, and it's still not finished yet. And we'll do another load of recording when we can fit it in and when we're both available. But it's not I've got to do everything at once, and I've got to do everything's got to be running, in parallel with each other. It's definitely not like that. I'm just getting better now at being okay, this book is a big undertaking, so right now that's my main focus. And then there are other projects that are on hold that I'm okay, I'll start writing that once the book is up on its feet, and I know I can put attention elsewhere.
Is there anything that you want to do that you haven't yet? Because at the start of this interview, you're telling me about making short films and stuff when you're growing up. You sound very creative. You're a film fan. Is there something you'd love to do in being the guy behind the camera instead of front of it for a bit? Or is there something that is on your list that you want to tick off that you've never achieved yet?
Well, I think that there are things that I'd like to do, but it's weird really. So it's I don't want to. I wouldn't say, I want to make a film or I want to make a sitcom or whatever. I think it's if I get an idea that I really want to do in that department, then I'll want to do that. So years ago, I think it's 2 years ago, I did a sitcom pilot. It was a sitcom that I'd written about jury service, and I really wanted to do that idea, and that really appealed to me. And it didn't get picked up. It didn't go to series. And then people are right, what's your next sitcom idea? And you're I really have
No.
have many, because like I wanted to do that. Like it's not like stand up where I'm like I really want to do stand up, so I just do a stand up show, and then I want to do another stand up show, and I naturally think like that. And that's what I want to do, and that's like really fulfilling to me. And with sitcoms, it was like I wanted to do that sitcom, but I don't just want to do a sitcom for the sake of it, just so I can say I did a sitcom and tick, and that's whatever. So like it's like that. So I got an idea for a film at the minute that I really love to do, and I'll probably write that after I've written the book, and we'll see if it goes anywhere. It probably won't, but like I think my kind of rule with all these things is that if it's something that I want to do, then I'll enjoy working on it.
Yeah.
I think that's the lesson that I've learned from being in the band originally years ago, is that I really wanted to do that, and I really enjoyed it, and then when it didn't work out, and you can even say failed, because it's not even that strong a word, but when it failed to do what we wanted to do, but it didn't actually feel that bad, because I'd enjoyed being in the band, and I was really proud of what we'd done, and so it didn't feel like failure at the end, because you're like, oh no, we've done what we wanted to do. But I've really felt like a failure at other times in my life when I've kind of pursued something that my heart wasn't really in it, and I was really just doing it to try and get, whatever it was, a radio series or a TV show or something like that. And it wasn't really something I was that passionate about, and then you get turned down at the end of that, and then you do feel like a failure, because you're like, well, that was a waste of time. I didn't even want to do that, and I've spent all that time just trying to really just become more successful or more famous, and actually there's nothing in that for me. Why did I chase that for a while there? So like, I think anytime there's a project that I'm really lucky to be able to, I'm privileged to be able to work in a job where I can do anything. Like, stand-ups can just say, oh, I'd like to write a film, or I'd like to present something, or, I'd like to write a book, or whatever it is. People kind of let stand-ups have a jab at all of that. And so I'm really lucky that I can kind of turn to my agent to be like, oh, I'd like to pursue this at the minute, and can we look into doing that? And so anytime there is something that, kind of I come up with an idea like that, like, then, that'll be the thing that I want to do next and work on next. But then, it's not necessarily... I haven't got a list of goals.
No.
There's not a list, and there never was with this. I think when I was in a band, the one thing that I do regret is that I planned out my whole life, and it was like, I want to, I want to headline Glastonbury, and I wanted to have an album that makes the top 100 albums of all time and be a classic, and all this like really, really big goals that and while I don't regret fully living my life like that, I think it's good to kind of like have these big dreams when you're late teens, early 20s, and to just do something artistically that's uncompromising and all that kind of stuff. I think that it does stop you from enjoying what you're doing at the time as much. And with stand-up, as I said, when I went into it, I didn't think it was going to be my job. I didn't think it was going to work out. So I just didn't have a plan. And I still feel like that. I still feel like if someone asked me, where do you see yourself in 5 years' time, I've never known. And I always know, maybe a year ahead, but that's because I'm working on stuff now. So, I'm like, oh, next year a book will come out, and next year I'll do a tour. So at the minute, that's like, those are the goals. I'm doing those things. I want to do those as well as possible. And I'd like to be able to film this new show and put it out again. And if Netflix wanted it, that would be the dream. I'd love to have another thing on Netflix, because I really enjoyed that process. But in terms of things that, I haven't achieved yet and haven't done, I don't, if I don't ever get to make a film or a sitcom or, I don't know, whatever it is, or have my own TV show or whatever, I'm kind of all right. It's just like, you're always a bit disappointed if like something you really wanted to get off the ground doesn't get off the ground. But again, like that sitcom, I really loved that pilot. I was so proud of it. I loved working on it with everybody, and it was disappointing when it got turned down. But I definitely didn't feel like I felt on other projects that my heart wasn't in. I was just like, okay, that I know that I'm proud of that, and I know that I think it was good, and that's all you can really ask of it. So I don't. As much as I'd say that I would love to do a sitcom that I'm really proud of. I'd love to do a TV show I'm really proud of. I'd love to do a film that I'm really proud of.
Yeah.
But at the same time, if I don't do any of those things,
you're fine.
I've achieved more than I thought I could achieve with this, and I'm in a position where I think if you're able to do stand-up shows and no one is telling you what to do in them, and you're able to focus on improving as well as a stand-up and trying to push that forwards, I really enjoy that, and it's a real joy. So even though sometimes I feel like quitting stand-up, and sometimes I kind of feel quite like I'm shit, or I can't handle it. Sometimes I'm just like, I'm not built for this actually, and whatever. But I always do come back round to being like, no, this is a really great medium to be able to work in as a creative person, because you just get to do whatever you want and push forward with your own artistic voice, I guess.
My final question for you today is, in the world right now, there's a lot of people wanting to be comedians because it's so popular. Like I said, you can turn on Netflix now and it's not one special. There's a whole section of, stand-up now, which is great. It's accessible. What advice do you give to those people like you that were growing up that, are trying to enter a world now of being a stand-up comedian?
I don't know. Because, when I did it, there was no I didn't have those kind of goals. I guess... Actually, no, I guess the only advice is that you just focus on your actual stand-up, I think any other advice that is this is what people are looking for, or if you want to get a special, here's what you do, or if if you're entering the world of stand-up, or if you're in any position, I think at any point in your life as a stand-up comedian, or your career as a stand-up comedian, whatever it is, the only thing you need to be focusing on is the quality of your stand-up comedy, and improving, and doing what you want to do with it, because everything else follows after that. And it's as soon as you get distracted with other people's success, other people's careers, what other people think of your stand-up, or you're not getting this, that, and the other. You want to be doing this, you're not doing that. That's when it all kind of falls by the wayside. And if you get obsessed with, I don't know, reviews, or awards, or whatever, it all falls apart. And all I've felt like I've done from the start, really, I've obviously not always succeeded in this, and you have to kind of slap yourself around a bit and go, stop focusing on stuff that doesn't matter. But the main thing I've done. And all I did was an open spot, because I didn't think it was going to be my job.
Yeah.
And there wasn't any ambition with it. So all I was doing was focusing on the stand-up being better, because that's all I was doing. I was going to gigs and doing stand-up. And so the only reason for doing it was to get better as a stand-up comedian. And then, that's all I can continue to do. So I just say, be honest with yourself about how good your stand-up actually is. Be your own harshest critic, and then just get under the hood and fix the problems with it, and focus on getting better. And the better you get at it, the more you'll enjoy it, and the more you're enjoying it, and the better you are at it, the more everyone else will be like, oh, we want to book that person for whatever it is, our gigs, our radio, TV, whatever they're doing. They'll invite you to go on it, and if they don't invite you to go on stuff like that, that's out of your control. So just leave this. Don't sit there stewing, going, why am I not getting that stuff? Because that's a killer, and it's easier said than done. We all do it at some point, but just focus on the actual stand-up. That's why you got into it in the first place. I would hope. If you're getting into it to be famous, or you're getting into it because you want to, just be a success or whatever it is, then I have no advice for you. I don't know. But if you're getting into it because you've watched stand-up comedy and you love it and you want to be that person on stage, then just remember that and just keep on doing stand-up because you enjoy it, and keep on improving and being as good at stand-up as you can, and make it worthwhile for the audience who are sitting there having to watch you,
Yeah.
But that's it, really. Just, there's no real secrets. Just do it for the right reasons and focus on stand-up.
And enjoy it.
Yeah, and sometimes you won't, sometimes you won't enjoy it, and that's okay. And don't make yourself feel bad about that. I've had loads of times I'm not enjoying it, and I've not been enjoying it on stage, and I've talked about how I'm not enjoying it, or I've gone home and been like, I don't know what I'm doing in my life, why am I doing this? And and it seems bad, but that's every job, So whatever job you're in, you're going to think at some point, actually, maybe this isn't for me, maybe I shouldn't be doing this, maybe I'm not capable for it, maybe I'm bad at it, whatever it is, and it'll be difficult. So you won't always enjoy it, but at those times, you still need to knuckle down and focus on improving the stand-up, When I'm not enjoying it and I'm thinking, oh, this is shit, whatever, the only way I can make myself feel better about it and start enjoying it again is by going, okay, what's wrong with this show, or what's wrong with how I'm performing at the moment, and, address that at the next gig. So yeah, always the answer is that you just focus on improving, and that's it. Focus on improving, get better in stand-up.
It sounds like you've got an amazing year ahead next year. Hopefully we'll be seeing a new book from you if everything goes well, and obviously you've got the tour as well, which we might see hopefully on Netflix again, so I wish you all the luck with that.
Thanks, man. Yeah, we'll see what happens with both of them, but either way, yeah, it's enjoyable doing them in the meantime.
So there it is, me and the local boy himself, James Acaster, and what a great guy. A really good interview that goes into a lot of his background and experience, and it kind of, I don't know, when I was listening back while editing, I thought it really motivated me and kind of wanted me to do better with my life, and that's what I think is a great message when you're listening to these interviews, and just to kind of keep working hard. But a great, great guest, and I'm so grateful that I've got him on the show. It took a while to happen, and I'm glad it has. And again, I'd love to get you back on, James, and that's something I'll aim for hopefully later this year. Being a local boy, it's not too far to travel either to get those interviews done. James is touring, and there's so many dates. When I was looking at his poster the other day, I was like, when is this guy going to stop and actually sleep? If you haven't got tickets, I recommend it. It's one of the best live shows I've seen. Get out there. There's even more dates towards the end of the year. There's like 2 separate tours. Just get on it because he's hilarious. Tickets aren't stupidly priced like some comedians out there. Seinfeld. But seriously, check it out and go and see him live. He's playing all over the UK. There's so many different dates. Check out his book. It's on Amazon. Go and order it. Also, seriously, get on Netflix. Watch Repertoire. It's awesome. There's 4 episodes on there which goes part of his special. 4 different stand-up shows that were taking place in a day. There's some of the best on there. Honestly, absolutely great stuff. Go on Twitter. Let him know what you think. Get on there. Tweet him. If you enjoyed the interview, let me know as well. That's what it's all about. We love reading these tweets and the Facebook comments and emails. Just go on markandme.com. On there's a link to all of my social media. There's also my Patreon page, which is building, and thank you to everyone that supported me last year. It's helped me get new equipment, travel to conventions, travel to all these different places to do the actual interviews. I saw a comment the other day that made me laugh when someone asked, I think it was on Facebook, how much do I pay the guests to get them on the podcast? And that's hilarious because if anyone knows me, I don't have much money and I'm not going to be able to pay guests. The whole idea of doing these interviews is with people that want to come on the show, that I work hard. Maybe it takes 6 months to 12 months to get some of these guests. None of them, since the launch of this podcast, have ever been paid. I haven't got the money to buy decent food. Never mind paying guests to come on the podcast. So, yeah, it's all about the love and doing it because we want to do it, not for the big paycheck. Thanks again to everyone that has tuned in, and I hope this is going to be a great year ahead. I've got some fantastic interviews already recorded, and they're going to be edited and released over the next few weeks. It'll probably be a couple of weeks now because I've got a new Skip to the End out next week, and then we'll be back. And as always, you know by now, I don't tell you. You have to work it out for yourself. There will be clues online. I did it with James Acaster and people guessed after the first clue. So maybe I need to make them a little bit tough. I don't know. But it's also fun when people get it straight away. But thanks everyone to listening to today's episode. As I said, go and check out James's work. Buy stuff. Do what you need to do. But check out his work. And I'll speak to you all again in a couple of weeks' time.
2, 1, 2, 3, 4